Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. I'm your host, Rashid, and as always, my guy always comes through for me. I got to bring him on. He needs no introduction. Probably one of the two most busiest people on social media, especially dealing with this Ukraine, this African, this what is it, Asian situation with the United States trying to impose her will on China, and what she's doing in Ukraine is crazy. So I got to bring my guy in, my friend in. Mr. Larry Johnson. How's it going, Larry?
Hey, man, you're a liar. You said I'd never leave you hanging. I left you hanging a couple of times. You're just the man of a good heart. You forgive me.
Hey, I appreciate all of the time that you can give me, whether it's 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I'm just blessed, man, that you saw fit to give this platform an ear. Larry.
I always enjoy our chats. We're able to cover some important territory.
So where are we right now with the Congress and Joe Biden and this funding on Ukraine? Again, before you answer that, I want to go back to something that HUD had come out with an estimation that it would take $20 billion to eradicate homelessness in America, and another 20 to 40 to alleviate or eradicate poverty in America. Why are they so hell-bent on funding Ukraine at the expense of Americans?
Yeah, the Robert Preston in the movie The Music Man, when he sang, "We got trouble right here in River City." Yeah, we got big troubles here in America. We're living it. It's almost like watching a mentally ill person, someone with schizophrenia. Because on the one hand, as you correctly note, we're hurling multi-billions of dollars overseas. It's not just in Ukraine. Look at what we spend in Afghanistan. Look at what we spend in Iraq. We're well over $1 trillion with all of those put together. And yet, here at home in our inner cities, the numbers are off the charts. Like 80% of the kids who are supposed to be graduating from a high school are barely literate, can barely do math or read. So they're not even being equipped with the intellectual skills they need to succeed in life. The family unit is under attack, or instead of, when you go back to like 1940, particularly among Black Americans, they had the highest marriage rate. Of even higher than the Caucasians. And here we are, 90 years later, and you've got on both Black and white, where marriage is increasingly infrequent, more kids living in single parent households, and with that comes a whole host of social problems. And this sort of moral breakdown in America, I think, is directly attributed to a rejection of religious values. I think there's no doubt about it, which is one of the reasons we hate Russia, because those damn Russians, they're a bunch of religious people. Now, Russia's a really unique place. I just came back there. I was there a week and a half ago. They are 75% Christian. They practice this Eastern or Russian Orthodox Christianity. But there's also significant Muslim populations in Russia. They are not persecuted. They are embraced as part of the nation. They're not treated as something separate or odd. And the Muslims, Kadyrov is one of the more prominent political and military leaders, are profound Russian patriots. So Russia's found a way that it bridges these, ethnic, religious divides that a lot of times we find here in America. And the same thing on the racial side. They don't have this built-in sort of prejudice that, depending on how much skin color you got, that's suddenly you can become a better or worse person. I mean, it's just, we're saddled with some real bullshit in this country. Excuse me, but it's so irritating, particularly when you go see it in another state or another nation. And the difference between Russia, for example, banned LGBTQ organizations. They passed a law. They said, what you want to do in the privacy of your bedroom, that's your business. But don't be bringing it to the streets. That we're not going to allow that. So we're a nation that believes that the value is heterosexual, mother and father, children, that we want normal families. We're trying to promote that. And that they passed that law a few weeks before we had this incident last week in the judiciary, in the hearing room of the Senate Judiciary Committee, where that Stafford or Senator Ben Cardin was caught in some flagrant homosexual act, and they were filming it, and they thought it was like a cool thing, which is why they posted it on social media. Yeah, when the Russians look at us and say, those Americans are pretty, degraded, degenerate, they got a point.
Well, Larry, don't you think the destruction of family, the structure of family, and the defunding and the destruction of America's educational system lays at the base of the crumbling society of the immorality of America now? And isn't that just projected in politics now?
Yeah, no, it all flows from that. You can't, and it's not just confined to Democrats. We're seeing it on the Republican side. I mean, look at this guy who was the leader of the Republican Party in Virginia, and he and his wife were out publicly about, we're really against homosexual behavior. And then they found out that a woman that they brought into their marriage, so they had a threesome, and she's leveling rape charges against him. And so here's his wife out being this prominent anti-homosexual, and she's engaged in homosexual activity. I mean, come on. If you're going to speak out and take a position, then, by God, live, don't just talk it, walk it. And, that's the problem we've had this, I attribute it to nothing more than just selfishness. And people are only thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about any obligations to children, to community, to nation. And so, when you attack the family like it's been attacked, and I maintain raising girls is one thing, raising boys is another. And if you're raising boys without a man in the house, without a father, those boys are going to get out of control. I don't care who they are, because I know growing up, one thing that kept me from doing some pretty stupid stuff was I was afraid of having to go home and face dad. And there are, I think most men will attest to that. Men that have grown up with a father, that, the father sort of lays out the law and lays out the boundaries. And, it helps keep guys from doing stupid stuff. And more often than, you get young guys without a father and with a mother. I remember one time my mom was chasing me around the house with a baseball bat. I was laughing at her because I was now bigger than her. So,
but Larry, that says a lot, because America goes around the world with this high moral compass, and the world is looking at America's society and how it's in a tailspin downward. Has America lost her footing politically and geopolitically globally? Because it seems like everybody is starting to call her out on everything.
Yeah, well, no, we're starting to lose it. That's what this entire misadventure into Ukraine is all about. The United States finally crossed a bridge, burnt the bridge, and find out that we're on the wrong side of the river and we can't get back. We tried to bully Russia. We tried to destroy Russia. And now we found out that we may have destroyed ourselves in the process, and that Russia's going to come out of this just fine. So we look at our military. The last numbers I saw, I think our army, its manpower is down below 443,000. Guess what the Russian army is now? 1.3 million, about 3 times what we are. And those guys are trained, and they're not being asked to use certain pronouns. They're not wasting their time doing all this diversity, equity, inclusion nonsense. They're focused on learning how to be soldiers and learning how to fight. The total U.S. armed forces, I believe the number is at about 1.3 million. That's when you lump in Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps. Well, the total U.S. Russian army is at 2.2 million. So they're bigger than us. They're better than us. They have better air defense. They have better electronic warfare. They actually have better tanks that actually work in the mud, as opposed to ours, which don't even start. So, we've witnessed a complete transformation. And right now, the military across the board announced to Congress just week before last, we missed all of our recruiting goals. This is they just they couldn't sell a fur coat to an Eskimo kind of thing.
Well, how does that affect the politics and the policies of the U.S.? Because it seems like they only know how to continue along failed policy. Look at what's going on in Ukraine, and where are we when it comes to Ukraine on the battlefield?
Yeah, well, so let's go with the first of where are we with the political side. This is I don't know if you've ever been on a farm with a bunch of pigs when it comes time to get fed, but when they throw that food in the slop trial and then all the pigs come running, that's Washington D.C. They're just scrambling to push each other out of the way to see which pig gets to eat first, eat most, it is unfortunate. That's one of the reasons they're scared to death of Donald Trump. Trump, with all of his faults, I mean, he's far from perfect. I'm not in any way suggesting that. But by God, the man is not some greedy bastard that's trying to shove his way to the front of the trial and make sure that he enriches himself and his family at the expense of other Americans. But that's just the opposite of what Joe Biden's done. And yet, look at the media attacks. The media tries to protect the Bidens. The media savages the Trumps. If Donald Trump Jr. or Eric had done, 1/10 of what Hunter Biden did, by God, they'd be wearing prison uniforms, and frankly, they probably should be. But instead, the Hunter Biden gets to, try to portray him as a victim. Now, when you're in this kind of denial, and you keep lying to yourselves, you lie to yourself about, hey, men can get pregnant. Yeah, men can have babies. Okay, you lie about that. You lie about climate change. You lie about, a whole host of things. And then you go over and you fight a war based on lies in Ukraine, and you're getting your ass kicked. So we can't supply Ukraine with the artillery shells they need that they say are required to fend off the Russians. So right now, the Ukrainians, the Russians, they all admit that for every one artillery shell or mortar shell that the Ukrainians are firing, the Russians are firing 7, 8, sometimes 9 more back. I'm not great at math, but I can figure out, I hit you one time, you punch me 9 times, I think you're going to hurt me a lot more, The same thing with the shells. So what's going on the battlefield is Ukraine is losing, and the mainstream media is starting to admit it. You've had just a rash of articles in the Washington Post and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal of late, laying out that, oh boy, things are not looking good. And they're trying to tie it to, if they don't get enough funding, I tell you what, you could give them Warren Buffett money and it wouldn't make any difference. They still wouldn't be winning.
Well, with that said, why are the Western nations doubling down on failed policy? And do you think that Russia will take the whole of Ukraine? Where do we stand with that?
I think Russia's made it very clear that if there's a negotiated end to this war in Ukraine, it will be an unconditional surrender by Ukraine. There's not going to be any concessions by Russia. We're not, unlike Ulysses S. Grant, who looked at Robert E. Lee and said, you know what? Tell your boys that they can keep their rifles and they can keep their horses. Because Grant was at least thinking ahead. He knew they're going to need the rifles to shoot some squirrels so they could eat. And they're going to need those horses and mules in order to plow fields and plant food. So he at least allowed them to have some dignity. Russia's not going to allow the Ukrainians to keep their guns. They're not going to be allowed to have an army. I think that is they're going to have to disarm completely. They're going to have to turn over all their major weapon systems. They're going to have to divulge all the secrets of their cooperation with Western intelligence. But I don't think Russia is going to try to occupy all of Western Ukraine from the west side of the Dnieper. If people look at a map, the Dnieper is sort of like a crooked zipper that runs down the middle of the country. So everything to the left of that, that'll be Ukraine. But let them go into the EU. Boy, that'd be, that's like sending like your brother-in-law's got leprosy. You want to send him over to the other family? That's what they're going to do. Send the guy with the contagious disease over to those people. We don't want them. Russia I'm sure, will occupy and take over Odessa. Because as Putin said last week, it's a Russian city. It's not a Ukrainian city. That's a Russian city. And they're going to make it Russian again. This war of attrition, I think it's accelerating. I've heard some Western analysts suggest, and even some Russian analysts suggest that this conflict could go on for 2 or 3 years. I don't know what they're smoking, because you got to have the manpower, the trained manpower to do that. Where's that coming from? The Ukraine doesn't have it. You've even had this week their head of their intelligence unit, Budanov, admit that we're grabbing a bunch of people off the street. We're strong arming them into the military, but they're fat, they're old, they're not competent, and it's just we got a warm body with a uniform. That's about it. They're useless. So that's not a recipe for so-called stalemate. And even those that, again, this is the level of dishonesty. They can't even admit it's not a stalemate. You know what? A stalemate is like, you and I are in a fight. We were in a boxing match, right? And we punched each other out to the point neither of us can raise our hands. Mm-hmm. We don't even have the strength to headbutt each other. We're just standing there breathing, looking at each other. Okay, that's a stalemate. This is Muhammad Ali putting a whooping on somebody. He's just pummeling them. That ain't a stalemate. And the other guy can call, the guy getting punched can call it a stalemate. Okay, go. That makes you feel better, but you're getting pummeled, and that's exactly what's happening to Ukraine.
Well, with the loss of Odessa, the coming loss of Odessa, all of the areas where they have that black earth, all of the industry, all of the areas with coal and the resource-rich areas of Ukraine fall into Russia's hand, wouldn't the rump Ukraine lose most of its utility to the U.S. and NATO forces against Russia?
Yeah. Well, in fact, Russia already controls that. It's that territory that is to the east of the Dnieper that Russia controls the vast majority of that right now. That's the valuable land. That's where the factories are. That's where the salt mines are. That's where the rare earth minerals are. That's where the oil and gas are located. So, Russia's going to be in control of that. Russia already has the status as the number one country in the world in terms of natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
United States and China are up there, 2 or 3, but Ukraine used to be number 5. Well, Russia is going to solidify its position as number 1 because it controls much of what Ukraine used to control. And so I really don't see how Ukraine survives as much of a viable country. It's already lost like 50%, more than 50% of its population. If you go back to 2014, it had about 40 million people. Maybe that got up to about 42 million. Now the estimates are it's below 20 million. That's a combination of the Ukrainians looking around saying, I'm not staying with this mess. And, they bug out. They go to some other country. They either go to Russia or they went into Europe. And then you've got, well over 1 million casualties killed and wounded from the war. So the population, they do a graph, and sometimes the graph looks like a normal curve, the bulge in the middle, or you can have most of the bulge is the kids who are between 12 and 20, and then it starts decreasing. Well, this one looks like an hourglass. The dip is in the middle between the ages of 20 and 40. They're literally losing an entire generation of men in particular. And that just means one thing. They're not going to be making babies. And if you're not making babies, your population's dying. And then especially those who say, "Oh, okay, we're gonna choose a homosexual lifestyle." Okay, good, go for that. You're not producing any kids either. So, this is ignoring Mother Nature. It's that kind of stuff. And so, Ukraine's not going to have the ability to sustain itself over time. And again, with Russia's weapons capabilities, which can reach out and touch about any place in Ukraine, the prospects of Ukraine building viable factories, at least above ground, and viable training centers for military personnel are almost zero.
Well, Larry, with that said, why would the EU start accession talks with Ukraine when it will be a debt burden on an already indebted European Union? Isn't that suicide? Economic suicide?
Yeah, potentially, but let's remember they had accession talks with Turkey over 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Turkey's still waiting. they're still waiting. So if I were the Ukrainians, I wouldn't be holding my breath because they'll pass out. They'll be turning blue before they get a chance to get into the EU. And there are some real questions about, can the EU survive? The divisions are growing, and the economic disruption that has occurred in Europe because of this war is significant. And that, I believe, is going to lead to some other real, political upheavals in various countries, Germany and France in particular.
I know the time is constrained, so I'll only ask you 2 or 3 questions. Larry, what does it say about the economic interest of Mr. Corruption? That's our president. I mean, he has a corrupt sign all over his chest and head and everything. What does it say about their economic interest in Ukraine? And is this a major part of why he refuses to acknowledge the obvious in Ukraine and walk away?
Well, he had, I'm not sure how large the economic interest was, but it was worth at least over $1 million to Hunter, sitting on the board of Burisma. But what we don't know is what other secret deals were in place that were going to enrich Joe Biden. We do know that this scheme was not confined to Ukraine. It was global. It would involve China and, I believe, Kazakhstan. So they were the ultimate grifters. You could probably say, hey, we got the best president money could buy. Well, actually, okay, we have one of the most expensive presidents money bought, but boy, he is terrible. He's terrible at what he does. He's not good. But think about this: how they haven't been hiding it in the news. How BlackRock has been in negotiations with the Ukrainians and has got buying up swaths of land. We're going to help you rebuild, but this comes at a price. We're not necessarily your friends. And everyone say, "Oh, okay, that'd be great." BlackRock helping rebuild Ukraine. And I said this on another show in Russian. I said, let's do a little thought experiment. Let's change the name BlackRock to China. Let's change the name Ukraine to America, and say, "Hey, China's coming into America to buy everything up, and it's going to take control of all this land and property. And hey, it'll be a good deal for us." Do you think what would Americans say? Well, we already know because already been hollering about Chinese influence. By God, we got to keep it out. So why is it that we think it's okay for Ukraine, but it's bad for America? That's where this lack of consistency, the hypocrisy that stinks, comes into play.
And last question. There was a report that recently Russia launched a missile strike on a Ukrainian base that killed a large amount of Ukrainian officers and some NATO officers. Is there any credibility behind that that assertion by some of these bloggers or news organizations?
Yeah, I've not heard that. I know that the last big strike 3 or 4 days ago in Kiev was targeted at a Patriot missile battery. Now, whether that was being operated by U.S. personnel or Ukrainian personnel, I don't know, but that was destroyed. So the concern we've got is that they've now decided to send this general, 3-star General Aguta, to Kiev to sort of look over the shoulder of the Ukrainians to tell them what to do. Boy, that's going to turn out well. And that guy, when he travels, he's got about another 150 guys and gals in uniform who are his staff that follow along behind to do everything, to prepare PowerPoints, make coffee, whatever. So you're going to put more Americans in Kiev at a time when, at some point the Russians may decide to hit that operations center. And if they do, we're going to wind up with more dead Americans.
Oh. That's crazy. It's like Joe Biden is walking us into World War III. Larry,
well, hey, you're paying attention to what's going on in the Red Sea right now.
Yeah.
So that expect we very well could be in a shooting war there by the end of the week. Because the Houthis they've shut down. They've effectively shut down the Red Sea for commerce, and so container ships and oil tankers are saying, "Nope, we're not going there." And so the United States has now shifted its naval force, which was off the coast of Israel. It's now gone down through the Suez Canal, is now down in the Red Sea. And other ships from other nations like the United Kingdom are joining up, maybe France. And they're going to attack the Houthis in Yemen. And it remains to be seen if the Houthis have a sufficient mobile missile capability that they can evade the attack and then retaliate and sink a ship or two. So this is, this thing is going to get pretty sporty, and we could really be, it'd just be one more fire going that's going to potentially consume the whole house.
Larry, again, thank you, man, for the time. I mean, thank you so much.
All right, Rashid.
I'll send you the link to this shortly. Thank you so much, man.
All right, brother. Thank you, man. Take care. Right. Have a good day.
You too. And this has been the December 18th Intel Drop with my guy, Larry Johnson. Thank each and every one of you guys for joining. Also, join us later on today. We'll have Carl Zah on. Join us Friday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll have Scott Ritter on the program. We're trying to do it up for you guys. Hit the like, subscribe, share. Like, subscribe, share. Go to our Twitter, like over there, become a follower. Go to our Rumble, go to our Odyssey. We really appreciate it. Go to all of the platforms that we're trying to grow on, not just on YouTube. Also sign up to our Red Pill Journals, which is the sister channel on YouTube of the Red Pill Diaries. Thank you so much for joining us. We go out the same way we always come in, with love in our heart for each and every one of you. If you love truth, know that the true and living God will love you better. He will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, you see me? Your baby boy still loves you more than life. Thank you all. Deuces, we out of here.